Howdy folks. So we were looking at Sega's future plans in 1995, and yeah, let's just look at the last part of this article. So you won't see this in other magazines. The official development system being compared to the PsyQ developing system for the Saturn, and there's some info on that. So let's continue. Edge magazine, issue 23, and of course Edge, being as British as Mary Poppins, they love their Commodore because that was big in England, and well, Commodore was doing very badly in 1995, so they take a look at their 37-year history, how it started with first competing with Apple, the Apple I, and later the Apple II with the VIA. I never heard of that before. Then there was the PET, of course, and then finally they came out the VIC-20. That was the big one for Commodore. It wasn't big enough though, because after that they had the Commodore 64, which had 64K RAM, which was much more than the 16K in the VIC-20. And it was more or less the most powerful computer you can get on the market and had a cheap price, so naturally it was popular, even a little popular in the States, although Atari was more popular there, as was Apple. But in Europe the Commodore 64 dominated for at least 5 years. Then the article goes on to discuss the fight between the Amiga computer, which was very powerful, and the Atari ST, which was also very powerful. So, and in the end, it was the Amiga who won, at least in England. And after that, there's just talk about how the brand made a couple of mistakes, like the CD-TV and the CD-32. And that was more or less the end of the Amiga and Commodore. So into the review section. Star Trek: The Next Generation. There's a subtitle I forgot. Maybe it's here somewhere. No. Anyhow, it's very faithful to the television show. You have all the actors, and Edge gives it an 8, and they even go so far as saying that this was what Frontier Elite 2 should have been, a self-contained world with limitless exploration potential, but a guiding hand to steer you subtly through. So yes, there's some talk about, I wouldn't say it's a tutorial, but how the game builds up your knowledge of the game, and that's kind of nice. The game also has pretty good graphics at times. This picture is very well known. Apparently the combat is rather dull though. But if you love Star Trek and you're still in the 90s, you should check this out. I still think it's one of the better Star Trek games. Hey, Fatal Fury 3 getting a 7. I didn't check this one out. It had less fighters than Fatal Fury Special. It has a third plane to fight on, and that didn't interest me at all. So, yeah, and Edge doesn't know what to make of the game either. So they just give it a 7 because it looks good. Journeyman for the PC. Made by, published by Sony, I see. I don't think it was released for the PlayStation 1, but forgive me if I'm wrong. Now, I love this review because it's very cynical. It even ends with this. Perhaps the biggest giveaway is the files on the game's 2 CDs. Can I get a sharp image, please? Yep. Disc 1 is filled with a huge 646 MB file, while Disc 2 has a 452 file, big file, some files for installing the game, and QuickTime for Windows version 2. Okay, anything else? Because these are movie files. Well, yes, there's the game engine, a massive 760K. That's about 99.93% movie and 0.07% game. Interactive movie, anyone? So they lament how it's hardly a game, and they give it a 3. It's kind of like now it's called Dragon's Lair. You continuously have to make quick choices between going up, down, that kind of thing. And most of the time you die, so you keep trying over and over again. Puzzle Bobble, or there are a lot of different names for this game. I can't come up with the other ones for some reason, but you know it just by seeing the picture. First released on the Neo Geo, as far as I know, and Edge gives it a 7. Maybe she got an 8, maybe a 9, because this is a very good puzzle game. The competitive mode is a lot of fun. I still prefer Dr. Mario, but yeah, one of the better ones. And Edge included this game in the top 100 games of all time, if I recall correctly. So yeah, they're fans of this, but not at the time. Here's Ultra Vortex for the Jaguar. Another lame game trying to be Mortal Kombat. It looks horrible, plays horrible, and yeah, this is the Jaguar at its worst, releasing subpar games that probably could have worked on a Super Nintendo. Here's Grand Chaser. I talked a little bit about this earlier, and the Western name is Cyber Speedway, and Edge only gives it a 4. They don't like it, and I don't know exactly why. Some bad controls, I think. Yeah, the woolly handling. So split screen also doesn't work very well, apparently. So they're disappointed with the Saturn has when it comes to games so far. And there's a retro view of Hyper Sports. I've never heard of this game before, but apparently it's the sequel to Track and Field, Konami's 1983 game. Now, I never had an interest in these kinds of sport games because all you do is usually mash buttons or just practice one kind of little thing. But they're very popular for some reason, or at least they were back in the day in the arcade. And this Hyper Sports game also came out for the Commodore 64 and Spectrum, maybe also for the Nintendo under Track and Field 2. I'm not sure about that though. And well, Edge likes this kind of game apparently. Cities, never heard of that before. Okay, we have Gazzy here. And this issue finishes up with a interview with Howard Lincoln talking about the future of Nintendo. It's very sophisticated talk they have, and you can tell that Edge is trying to pull answers out of him which he cannot give. He talks a lot about the controller that Nintendo 64 was going to have. They say Lincoln says it's going to make a big difference. Well, I think it did. And talk about other companies, how Sony doesn't make their own games. That might be a problem. And Sega not having enough money in the bank to support all these different consoles, while Nintendo will always make money off of selling consoles. Edge has their typical attitude of saying, yeah, the Super Nintendo's been going downhill ever since its release. And Lincoln's like, no, that's not the case. We're still making great games. So, and they'll say, yeah, what about the third-party licenses? And he says, well, we have Rare, and it's a shame that other companies can't do the same, but that's not up to us. So, yeah, it's good hearing from Howard Lincoln again. He's been, it's been a while since he's worked for Nintendo. And not to be confused with Howard Phillips, the editor of Nintendo Power, who we all loved. This guy wears a tie. Howard Phillips had a bow tie. That's the difference. Q&A. Don't recall seeing anything interesting here. So let's continue on to the preview for next time. We have full motion video. No, I'm sorry. Excuse me. This is looking at